A very warm welcome to OmniFocus Workflows with Jason Atwood, and really happy to have Jason here today. He was a guest on Learn OmniFocus, I think it was about 5 years ago now, back in 2019. And it's really great to circle back and see where things have come over the years. I know I had some really key takeaways from the last time he was on, and the wisdom he shared has made its way into my own system and workflows. So I'm really curious to hear what he has to share today. And for those of you who are new to Learn OmniFocus, very warm welcome. This is a site that I launched way back in 2014. So we just had our 10th anniversary, and it's going stronger than ever. We've had people join from over 90 countries over the years, and our members have a wide range of backgrounds and cultures and professions. The one thing we all share is we all use OmniFocus. And the goal from the beginning has been to support all of you in living a fulfilling and productive life, making good use of OmniFocus and complementary apps. And I want to emphasize the complementary side because OmniFocus is never really meant to be a complete system. It's part of a larger system. And it's really important to use OmniFocus effectively, but also make sure that you have other apps in your kind of constellation of apps that is supporting the overall productivity. OmniFocus 4, I think, as probably most of you know, launched officially back in December, and that's continued to evolve as the Omni Group adds features and do some fine tuning. Since December, I've added 4 courses to Learn OmniFocus, and the course library is essentially the heart of the content within Learn OmniFocus. And I've got another one in the works that I'm really looking forward to releasing. It's around using OmniFocus 4 with note-taking apps. So I'll be featuring apps like Apple Notes and Craft and Obsidian and Notion, and just really showing about this key relationship between note-taking, task management, and then the third piece is the calendar. And those are really, I think, the three sort of key apps within a personal productivity system. So really looking forward to unveiling that. A change that I made with the release of OmniFocus 4 is to move towards doing self-guided courses. So we used to record courses live, and I decided I was going to make all of those self-guided, but I really wanted to have that live engagement as well. So the idea is you watch the courses and then you come and enjoy a workshop where you'll be guided through the process that I talk about in the courses. So the first course to get a workshop is the Getting OmniFocus Back on Track. The workshop itself is really just putting the course content into practice, and I've led a couple of those so far. I've had really amazing response. It's been transformational for some of the participants, and so I encourage you to check this out. So go through the course and then join us for the workshop. And at the time of this recording, there's a couple open for registration, and I plan to offer the workshops every 4 to 6 weeks. And you can learn about them at learnomnifocus.com/workshops. Another live session that's been around pretty much since the beginning is Learn OmniFocus office hours. These are limited to 10 people. Ask questions, share kind of your wins from along the way, or just come and kind of be a part of the conversation, even if you don't have anything particular to ask or share. And if you go to the office hours page at learnomnifocus.com/OH, then you'll be able to click on a button that shows you all of the upcoming sessions in your own time zone. So keep an eye out for that. And similarly, I've taught a course on focus and wanted to give people the opportunity to put that into practice. So this is where virtual co-working comes in. So this is where you can come and work alongside other people in our international community and kind of learn what works and what doesn't work for you in terms of focus. So these sessions are about getting things done, but they're also about kind of honing your focus skills, developing that focus muscle. And if you go to the learnomnifocus.com/VC, you'll see there's a button where you can click on to see all the upcoming sessions again in your own time zone, and you can register right from there. It's my pleasure to welcome back Jason Atwood, and he's joining us from the New York City area. and he's the co-founder and CEO of Arkus Incorporated. And this is a Salesforce consulting company that launched back in 2010. And one thing, I think the reason I found out about Jason originally is he's a very seasoned GTD practitioner. He's been practicing GTD, I think, for 20 years now. So he's been around since the early days of GTD, and his wisdom in this area hasn't gone unnoticed. He's been a guest on the Getting Things Done podcast a couple of times, and I definitely recommend listening to both of those. He also completed, this is almost like an Olympic achievement, I think. He completed his 1,000th weekly review, and he wrote a blog post for the Arkus blog talking about the insights from this experience and what he learned from 1,000 weekly reviews. I guess it's over 1,000 at this point, but I definitely recommend checking that out. Jason's also a certified GTD practitioner and consultant, so he's certified to lead courses on GTD, and he's also a very seasoned OmniFocus user. Some of you might know about kinkless GTD, which was a way of using Omni Outliner to do getting things done, to apply the getting things done methodology. So Jason was an adopter of the kinkless GTD approach, and not surprisingly, he was there right at the launch of OmniFocus 1 and has used every version since. So when he teaches at Arkus, he teaches GTD principles, but he also teaches people how to apply them using OmniFocus. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jason.
So great, by the way, best introduction I've ever had. I actually just want to stop right there because I've never had such a great introduction. Thank you very much. It's great to be back. We had talked, I remember after that last session, we had talked about coming back for, you said, well, when OmniFocus 4 is out. So that's how long it's been. So yeah, I've been an OmniFocus user for the longest time. I think the thing, I was thinking about today before getting on and kind of preparing for this. I was like, not only am I an OmniFocus user, obviously on the iPad, on the iPhone, and on the desktop. I think I'm probably 75% desktop. I think that's something we talk about a little bit. But just in general, I have always, especially when it comes to applications, and this would be across any application, when I train people at Arkus in productivity, which we do, everybody gets trained on GTD. I've actually moved to my managers now being trained on GTD for teams or teams, the GTD, getting things done with others, because it's actually so good. So just as a way of like having a way to live your life. And then we say, everybody, look, if you want to pick a productivity tool, here are the ones we think are great, but we provide licenses for OmniFocus. So about half the company stays on OmniFocus. Some people go in, come out, jump on bandwagon because it's a great tool, but like I make the joke, it's with great tools comes great responsibility, and it sometimes can take a lot to get in and to feel comfortable in it. And a lot of my methodology for using OmniFocus is about simplicity. It's about keeping it simple, and making sure that, and that's sort of where I start when I start showing people my OmniFocus is, if you notice, a lot of it is just very simple, right? I don't do a lot of icons. I don't do a lot of, things in your face. I try to keep it, because part of, staying focused on tools and technology is making sure you don't get distracted. So the first thing I do when I go in and train people is I just take away all the icons. The other thing that does for people, or is helpful for productivity's sake, is it makes you learn the key commands. Right? We know that it's much faster to use the key commands to jump between things than it is to go in and do things like to do manual clicks. So that's the second thing I get everybody used to using key commands, because any tool, doesn't matter what the tool is, when it comes to GTD, I call it the friction. Like if there's friction to putting data into your tool, then that friction will stop you from doing it, right? If there's friction from capturing something, then you're going to not capture it. If there's friction from getting something out of your head, then you're going to keep it in your head. So removing as much friction, and that means being the fastest and easiest way to get anything out of your head and get it into your system, your trusted system, is really where I try to focus people in. And one of the reasons I'm a big OmniFocus user is because there's very little friction for getting data in, right? Whether it's using the the woman, I won't say her name, or whether it's using, the key commands or quick capture, or mail to, or there's just a lot of different ways. And you want to, the more you can get into it, the more you can put into it, the better. And at this point, I would say OmniFocus is so incorporated in my life. I mean, I generally train people when talking about productivity and GTD and their trusted system. I talk to them about using OmniFocus, using your other trusted tool as much as you do your calendar. And I start with people like, how many times a day do you look at your calendar? So you guys can all think, how many times a day do you look at your calendar? Well, you probably look at your calendar somewhere between 5 and 100 times a day, because it is your trusted, it's your thing. You don't try to memorize it. So really getting people to sort of bring the habit of every time they look at their calendar to look at their OmniFocus, and build that in, right? And start in the view. So I'm a full OmniFocus 4 user, obviously, but I was on the was beta testing it. And actually, at this point, I don't even remember what OmniFocus 3 looks like. I've been on it for so long. It's like, oh, I forgot it. And again, my setup really is about the simplicity of it. I'll just walk you through some of the things that I do. A couple of things I think that are good to set up from the beginning. There's, I have a list of 10 things to set up when people begin to help. Actually, a few of them are just sort of, if you want to have a look and feel thing, the organization. What's nice in OmniFocus 4 is a lot more customization of what the columns you see. And you'll see when I start showing my system, it's very basic. So I think one of the things I suggest to people is when you're setting up your OmniFocus, ask yourself, do I use this feature and should I use this feature? Right? I don't use the notes a lot. I have another app for that. So I remove that column. I don't use flags, so I remove that column. So that's one of the great things about 4 is you can kind of have a lot more control and make it simpler. Because again, a lot of people, when they start with OmniFocus, they see a lot and they're like, oh, it's a lot to deal with. So sort of removing some of that stuff. So the other thing I always tell people getting started is using the quick entry and change it if it's not already set to option space. Making sure they sort of learn that, right? Learn the quick entry, learn it, and get it so you can pop up. I'm doing it in front of you. You should be able to see that. And again, even with this, making sure that you have put the things in. If you make people fill out a form that has 20 things in the form, they're not going to fill out the form. If you make it just a couple. So one of the things I do with my quick capture is I just have a few things in it. So you can pop it, have it to a right window size, and then you look on the view, and then I've really removed everything else, right? Because when I'm capturing, I don't need to capture this other stuff. I just need to capture, the project itself, the due date, and the tag. So one of the really nice features, you can be very granular with what you see on the screen. So that's one, is sort of set up quick capture, set up for a good key command, and make sure you're not capturing too much. So they know that they don't have to capture. So it's just really, really easy, quick and easy to get in and out. Other things I like to do, obviously you can do the appearance. I keep mine dark because I like it separated from the rest of my programs. I know a lot of programs now flip back and forth, right? So like my Chrome does that now with the dark and light, and that's fine. But I keep OmniFocus dark so it kind of stands out, and I can always see where it is, or I can bring it forward if I want it. The other thing, so in when you get into the layout, you can do a lot of what you want to see, right? So you want to see what you want to see in display versus what you want to see in editing. A lot of granularity, and it's really nice. Again, my suggestion is go in, just say, do I use this? If I don't use this, then you don't need to see it, because otherwise you're going to see a lot. The other thing I suggest everybody is I don't know what this defaults to anymore, but it used to be 1 week. This review projects every week. I do not think this should be 1 week. This should be at least 2 months. What happens is you set this to 1 week, then every one of your projects, the more projects you put into your system, which you should be putting in everything, right? Get it all out of your head. Then that review perspective becomes a lot. It's just everything's being reviewed every week. And that's not really what was supposed to be done, right? If I have thousands, and I do have thousands of projects, I don't want to review thousands of projects every week, right? That would be too much. It's meant to review things, and this is one of the hacks that I tell people, is you should set your projects to review by what they need to be reviewed by. So, if, like renew my passport, for example, right? I have a repeating project for renewing my passport. I don't want to review that every week, right? I only need to do it every 10 years. So maybe I got to set that to once every 12 months, right? I might set it to a different cadence. So I really think when you're putting in your projects or you're setting these repeating projects, think about how often they should be reviewed. You can do it from here by setting it as a big number, and then you can do it in the individual project, and I'll show that with the inspector. And you can do it at the bottom and say, hey, review this every whatever. But I suggest putting that at 2 months to start. I think this should maybe even move it up, because as you get more and more, it just becomes that perspective becomes, which is such an awesome feature of OmniFocus, because it's kind of like it doesn't exist in any other software that I've seen. And it's so built into the GTD methodology of getting things to kind of come back when you need to see them, or reviewing them to say, oh, I need to do that. But having thousands of projects come out every week is just too much. And then lastly, I'm also a anti-notification person. So I will sit here. There will be no notifications that go off on my entire screen anywhere. It's the only thing I won't mess up in this recording is that no notifications. And I don't do badge icons. I don't do notifications. I don't do any of it because of the focus thing, right? I know I have to go into OmniFocus. I know I'm going to look at it. It's not a chore. I don't need to be reminded. I look at it when I wake up in the morning with my calendar. What am I doing? What am I doing? At the end of the day, when I do my little daily review, I look at my calendar. I look at my OmniFocus. I make sure that those things are good, and then I've sort of closed out before I say, good night to the day, or stop work, or stop whatever I'm doing. So I undo all that. So no notifications, no things. Again, what I found with people is they come into OmniFocus and then they have all these things, and then it's like, oh, there's too much in here, and it gets kind of overwhelming.
At some point, it'd be great to hear about what your daily review looks like, and if that's like a repeating project in OmniFocus.
Yeah, sure. It actually isn't. So that's the other thing. Like, there are things that I do. There are lots of repeating projects. I'm a big fan of repeating projects. Basically, if there's things in your life that you're doing more often than not, put them into your OmniFocus. Set up a repeating project. I think it is one of the biggest powers of when you're using OmniFocus with GTD is you can automate your life. That's what I write blog posts about it. I talk about it a lot. It's just automate your life. I don't want to remember to, buy cat food. I don't want to remember that I have to get my car inspected every year. I don't want to remember that my license comes up every 10 years. I don't want to remember that, I don't remember any of that. I want that to be in the system, and I want it to be automated enough. So I have set up projects for basically anything that's going to happen more than once. There's another way to do that, which is with templates. Right? I know a lot of people like to use templates, but I think if you set up all these repeating projects, and then you have them out of your views, right? You change your perspectives, and I'll get into my perspectives in a second. You change your perspective so you're not seeing them, and they just show up when they're supposed to. Right? Your birthday should show up, 30 days before your birthday. It should pop up and be like, oh, it's your birthday. My camping weekend with my kid that I do every year. It actually is two projects. One that tells me to make the reservation in the fall, and then that goes away when I do it. And the other one tells me to, start packing, 3 weeks before it. So just lots and lots of repeating projects with a defer date and a due date, and that's important. And then just set the right repeating schedule. It's one of the huge features of OmniFocus that you can set this very granular. And the pushback is always like, well, isn't it take more time to do that? I'm like, sure, it takes a couple more minutes to set it up. But if there are things you're doing in your daily life that you need to know that are going to happen, better to have it set up. So reconciling bank accounts, paying bills, whether they're daily things. I have daily ones for like health and, mental wellness. I have, I do have one for my daughter, actually, she asked, she went off to college. She's like, I really want you to text me every day. So I have a daily check-in. And I have as a project, it has one task. It's just like check in with your kid. And I text her and say, good morning, whatever. And then I check off that one project, and I'll show that we can just show that as well. So, all right, so that's what I have settings. Again, very, very granular. If you go into customize your toolbar, which is right, I have removed everything. The only thing I keep up here is the sync, because I like to see that it's happening once in a while. But other than that, I have removed everything from there, up to and including search, which you can get to with a command. Again, the idea is to really focus in on using key commands, because you can move around so much faster. The second one is, so for my three, for my simplified perspectives, and I do have a lot, right? So I have a lot of perspectives, but I only keep the ones that I kind of pound through every day, and I have key commands for each one of them. So when you go to command 1 gets me to forecast, command 2 gets me an Arkus perspective, command 3 is my home, and then command 4 is projects. And actually, command 5 gets me to inbox, so I don't use it so often. So setting up really key commands for your perspectives is awesome. So that means you can jump in and out. If I just want to focus on my Arkus work today or now, or I just want to focus on my home, or I want to look at everything, I want to look at work, just being able to easily get there without having to click around, super, super helpful, and just makes the system much easier to use. So, for example, if I go to, so there you go. So here's my forecast. Now I have gone through, this is not all real because I did, it's being recorded. So I went through and I kind of changed some names and made people anonymous. I will say one of the things I tell people, and they ask, or usually people ask me about OmniFocus, is like, well, but it's very personal. And like, do you put your personal stuff in your work stuff? Do you have different systems for different things? And I said, no, because my brain doesn't have any separation. What I've learned from doing this for a while is, right now, if I said my kid, I think about my kid. If I say work, I think about work. My brain can't separate between those two things. So I have two systems, and it creates some of that, what I was saying before, friction, right? If I have to think about where I'm going to put something, which system I'm going to capture it to, well, then it's like, oh, it's another decision point, right? One more thing I have to process. So OmniFocus 4, much cleaner in terms of what you can show in your view. I've set it up to be very simple, to show the project, show the repeating. You can actually see these things. So here's a repeating project. That's an indicator of repeating in there. Water plants is the one I love to use as an example. So right, I'll show off the inspector here. I almost always hide the inspector. Again, key command to get to it. But this is great. If you haven't used this before, the complete with last action, that means you can set up a repeating project with one or two things. And then this one, when you get to the last of the thing and click it, it'll then make the whole thing go away. So, and then it disappears. And if it's repeating and you have your filters do not show pending projects, then they don't show up. And that's great. So these are two examples of that, right? Two repeating things. This one is I have to look into this Slack channel. If I don't go in every 6 weeks, I lose stuff. So I set this one up. And water plants, you can see I have a due date, a deferred date, and then it repeats every 11 days. That's the other big trick I try to train people is don't have repeat things just always on the same schedule, because then you'll have everything show up on the first of the month, everything show up on the first of the week, and you will feel overwhelmed. Plants don't need food every whatever, right? They're not on a calendar. Although let's see how good my plant is. But things but think about it. Do I really need to, water the plants every 11 days or 12 days? Or I sometimes change it if I have some plants die. But not having it hit out every Monday means that when you open up your OmniFocus, it's not crazy. And the same thing with repeating projects on monthly. Don't always pick the first of the month, because you're going to open up your OmniFocus on first of the month and go, oh man, I got too much, right? Think about when they should really happen. And this great feature that you can choose whether it gets done on the completion, meaning if I forget to water my plants, it's then 11 days from whenever I figure it out, or when it's assigned. I like to explain that as water plants is, look, if you skip 4 days and then water, you don't want to go 7 days from there. You want to, the next time it needs to be 11 days from whenever you did it, whenever you finished it. And if you do it early, it should be 11 days from that. That's completion. Assigned is, it's got to be done. If you miss it by a couple of days early, it still comes back to the assigned, 11 days from when it was assigned. Much more like taxes. So I like that analogy. You're in the IRS, or you're filing your taxes on April 14th. Your IRS project, your file your taxes project should always repeat and show up on the 14th or the 15th, so the 15th of April, every single year. Whether you file them early or late, next year it's still due the same time. So that's kind of a good way of separating out those two features. And you can see this one, right? I have it reviewed every 2 months. But these are great ways of setting up these things. And then as you do them, let's pretend I did water my plants, I did my 2 tasks, right? And then obviously it disappears, goes away from the view and goes dark. And then I don't see that, right? It's not in any of my views until it pops up, when it's deferred again. And that's really where I try to get people to really understand and use defer dates, because this means it's not going to show up until that next defer date. It's not going to show up in any of my views because I've set all my perspectives to not show things that are they're only active, not pending.
Just wondering, do you work from the forecasts perspective generally, or do you have a separate, like today?
Yeah, I just stay here. I stay in forecast. I just bounce between these three perspectives during like the day, but mainly forecast, because forecast is telling me what things are going on for today. Like it's saying what commitments I've done. Megan Birds and I met her for a lunch. We have this debate about due dates. A lot of people don't put due dates on things if they're not really due that way. I like to put due dates on things because I like them to show up on certain days. But it's my commitment, right? I'm looking at OmniFocus not as have to, but it's this is what you made a commitment to. And when I look at a view and I see 20 things I'm supposed to do for the day, I can decide which one of these actually needs to be done today or which one I can move off till tomorrow, right? And the science that I've kind of zoomed in on and maybe have some research on, it says about 20 things. I like to keep the amount of things that are in my view for the day around 20. Because if you scan a list of 20, you can go, oh, okay, here's the thing. So if I show up and I look at a view of 100 things to do, that's generally you can't scan that, right? You can't scan down. So try to keep that in the 20s. When I wake up in the morning, I probably see somewhere in the 50s, but a lot of them are the daily things, the check-in with, a lot of them are things that I just set up for myself to do on a daily basis. And I kind of go through and just check them off. There's also a huge psychological oomph of checking things off. People love to check things off. It feels good to check things off. I've admitted to many people that I will write down a task just to check it off. I'll write down a task in OmniFocus just so I can check the box and feel good about it on my iPhone. Even if I'm doing it or if I've just done it, there's something, I don't know, psychologically nice about seeing it get crossed off and you go, oh, I did it. So it's a nice way to stay in that as well. So the other part of my practice is I will renegotiate commitments with myself, right? This started on the blog post. I know this isn't actually due today. I'm more than happy to move this out and just drag and drop it to another date and say, you know what, I'm going to start on that on Monday, right? So part of my daily review is to make sure that anything that I had committed to for that day is either done or moved off. It's a way to kind of think, because sometimes you throw things in OmniFocus that's say hi to your, text your mother happy birthday, and that thing you can't recommit. And I think everybody's pretty good at that. You look at a list, you'll clearly see which ones, if you write them out well enough, you see which ones are the ones that are hard commitments and which are the ones that are soft commitments and things you wanted to start. But you can prioritize by just looking at a smaller list of things. Go, you know what, that one is important, or that one's coming up, or I'm jumping on Learn OmniFocus at 1 because I see it in my calendar. I need to go make sure I've set that up.
The forecast perspective is empty at the end of the day.
Empty at the end of the day. Yep. Because I'll just move them, right? So you can both move, you can, drag and drop a task, which you guys all know. Or I guess I'm here giving hints, but you can drag and drop these to different dates, which is nice. But you can also do that on a project too. I could take this entire project and just drag it up to Friday. And now that's going to be due on Friday. And it goes out of my today view. So I can go see it, right? Now it's in here. And if I look into all my things are repeating. But when I'm closing out my day, I can then figure out what I want to do and what are the things that I need to do or not. And it should be empty. That'd be my goal every day when I close out my day, is to say there's nothing left in there. Because otherwise I don't trust it, right? I want to look at the system. I want to go, because there are definitely times that there's things that are in there that are I said I was going to deposit that. I said I was going to send that email. And so I want to make sure that I've gone through. And I don't like waking up the next day and seeing red either, in the past view, right? If I put that in the past, I don't like that either. That's no fun. In terms of organization, I should just go collapse all. Toward my organization, I am a traditionalist in terms of, I'll stay in the inbox. In folder structure, I'm a traditionalist. I do them by areas of focus. So GTD, right? So you kind of what are your buckets of your areas of focus? Obviously, Arkus is a massive area of focus. It's very full of projects. But but then I try to keep everything, pretty high level. And I try not to go too many layers deep. I've learned, I see people do like, multiple levels deep. It just gets harder and harder to navigate. So I'd say if you can stay as few as you can up, meaning don't go too many nested, like 2 or 3, and try to keep, again, the whole principle of everything I do is like try to keep it so you could easily scan it. I'm standing here looking at it, scan what's there and go, oh, okay, these are the things I need to worry about. Is just a way to sort of folder things. And if one of your folders gets to it's like you see hundreds or too many of an item, then maybe break it out, right? Sometimes I will break or consolidate folders based on how much is in there. For this case, right? So, but those are where all those pending projects are. And if I expand I'll just expand them out. So if I look at, right, so I'll look at all these different folders. These are all empty. Right, so a couple of things I do. In my Arkus probably takes the most of my time. I mean, I spend a lot of time on it. I've created different folders just as I see. Sometimes I like to see things at the top, so I throw them as sort of, I have a lot of events going on. I did have a lot of events going on, so I built an events folder. When I had a lot of sales going on, I built a sales folder. And so just kind of keeping another folder for each one. And then for my team, these are all fake names, but I also do a project, for each one of my team, for everybody who's a direct report to me. This allows me to easily capture next actions for them, or waiting fors, or follow-ups. So just have their name, make it a single action list, which is great. And that way I can have an agenda item, all this sort of stuff. So I keep one for each one of whoever's reporting to me. And again, I move in and out of doing things, but I've done that for years. It's just very easy. It also means in your week review, you get to look over your team, people report to you, go, oh, other things are things that I'm working on, right? I generally try to go more verb, right? Oh, there's the Learn OmniFocus interview. I try to I do some naming conventions. I think having a naming convention, like I read a lot of blog posts. So I have one that has, if I'm capturing ideas, I'll just put blog and then whatever it is. And that way I can do a perspective that says, show me all my blog posts that I want, right? The ones that are pending or on hold. I can put these on hold. I'll do that a lot. Right? I'll put something on hold. So then, I'll show up in a different view. And then, just lots and lots of, like this is a repeating project. This is a real one, right? This is a real one. Get car inspected. It comes up every year and it shows me what to do. It gives me the 5 or 6 things. It literally surprised me. Like it showed up this morning. And I was like, oh, right. Or yesterday, I was like, oh, right. I got to get the car inspected. If you think about the things in your life from a GTD perspective, the amount of stuff that you have, like anything you take on, whether it's owning a pet, having a child, getting married, owning property, owning a car, there's probably 3, 4, 5, 6 repeating projects per those things. I mean, children alone, it could be hundreds, but pets, there's a huge amount, right? There's so many things you need to do all the time with pets and get them checkups and this and that and buy things. And when we do like mind sweeps and talk through and try to get these things out of people, I say, well, think about that thing. Like a friend of mine bought some property. And I said, oh, you just bought a new house. And I said, oh, you just took on, I don't know, 100 new projects. And the person's like, what do you mean 100 new projects? I'm like, yeah, you bought a house. You have 100 new projects. You want me to start listing them out? Here we go. Mortgages, maintenance, electricity, cable, sewage, water, turning things on, turning things off, alarms. I mean, you can just go forever. And so thinking those things and then turning them into OmniFocus repeating projects. So you don't have to remember the 150 projects that are in there. I really try to get people to think that way. It's like, how can I really, build a lot of stuff that repeats over and over again and just get it out of your head so it just shows up and does it. So this one's a repeating one. This one's a repeating one. You can actually, it always says it on the thing of it.
How would something like making the appointment get onto your list for today? If you're looking at the forecast, it wouldn't show up until the due date.
So I jump between these 4 perspectives every day. So I jump between forecasts. I then look at, all. So I'd say I stay in forecasts if if I'm overwhelmed, right? If I do nothing else for the day, I stay in forecast. So I didn't go anywhere else, but I always jump between them. So I'll start here, okay, whatever, but then I'll kind of go, because these are the things that need my attention more high priority. But then I will jump to my fourth, I'm doing key commands, right? And I will look at my overall projects. That's why only having so many active projects is really important, because I can look through a quick scan, and these are the ones that when people say, well, how do you do the work that doesn't have dates on it? Well, I'm looking through and I'm going, okay, is there anything I can add to this? It's also the great stalled perspective that you can use in OmniFocus, like what stalled. Each one of these should have a next action, but I can scan through this quickly. And again, my screen's a little blown up, so whatever. But normally I try to keep it between 20 and 30, maybe 40 projects, right? A lot of them are repeating things or not. And I can quickly then scan through that list and go, ooh, I need to get going on that, right? Because you know your projects, you know which ones have urgency and which ones don't. Right. I look over my team. I know that there's nothing urgent on that, but maybe it triggers something. I go, ooh, right. So staying in forecast is like kind of it's the survival mode. But then at a certain point, right, if I have like a couple hours, if I look at my calendar and I see free time on my calendar, 2 hours, not today, but another time. So I look at my calendar and I go, okay, I've got 3 hours. That's when I'll open up. I'll go to forecast. Is there anything I can take on in here? Then, oh no, nothing. Okay, let me open up and look at all projects, and I'll find something. I'll be like, ooh, maybe I should start that blog post because I got 4 hours. And it goes back to the GTD principle of the 4 methodologies of work, right? So it's the where you are, how much time you have, how much energy you have, and then what's your priority. So I always say you kind of look at what space you have and then say, okay, which one of these do I want to take on right now? Based on, do I have 5 minutes before a meeting? Or do I have like 5 hours before the next, before the end of the day? I might want to take on something chunkier.
Forecast is the mission critical, and then these other ones are important, but you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to move the needle on.
Yeah. And the thing is not to have too many of these. And I think that's the tip that I try to tell everybody. I end my weekly review by doing this and trying to have no more than, and look at all these things, try to have no more than 40 projects. So when I look at the numbers, I'm like, I want to have no more than so many active projects. And what it allows me to do is to really renegotiate my own commitments, right? Do I really need to work on this becoming a triple ranger right now? And that's when I will make a commitment. I'll say, you know what? No, that's actually something I need to do by the end of the year. I'm going to defer that out. And that's where I think the power of defer is. I'll just say, you know what? I actually don't need to do that. That's something I said I was going to do by the end of the year. So you know what? I'm going to start that in October, right? Or maybe I'm already halfway there. So I'm like, all I need to do is a little bit more. So I'll say I'll start that October 14th. I'm just picking a random date out there. And when I do that, it disappears, right? It's out of my view because in all my perspectives, I say, don't show me pending projects. So that way I did the boomerang, right? 37 folders. I put it into the October 14th bucket. It's going to show back up on October 14th. And then I can go, oh, do I need to take action on this? So put on hold, then it goes into that cycle of being reviewed however many times you want it. If you defer it out there, then that says that's when I want to start thinking about that again. Right. And so I use those 2 methodologies to try to, to navigate all the work that I have. Everything's in OmniFocus. It's just whether I've deferred it out to something because I know it needs to start at that point, or I'm put it on hold because it doesn't need any time, or it's a project, something that's repeating all the time, but it'll come back when I told it to come back. So using those 3 ways, you can manage a lot. I mean, I have thousands of projects in here, literally. I think the last time I checked, there's like 1,000 on hold and probably 1,000 pending. I mean, hundreds of thousands done, whatever. But I don't look at 1,000. If I looked at 1,000 projects or 2,000 projects every day, my head would explode. And that's what most people do when they get frustrated. They see everything all at once. So I say, go into perspectives. Go to that perspective of home. Click in it, edit it, and has a project that is active. Make sure you have that in there. And again, the new perspective like we don't have all the time in the world, but the new perspective views are really cool. But I always change it to has a project that is active, right? That means that I am only going to see stuff that's not pending. And what most people do is they see all their pending stuff and they're like, well, if I see all my pending stuff, then you don't need to see it, right? That's the beauty of OmniFocus is you don't need to see the stuff that you don't need to see until you need to see it.
Since you've done over 1,000 weekly reviews at this point, it'd be great to learn a bit more about what a weekly review looks like for you. And do you follow kind of the standard GTD approach to weekly reviews, or have you kind of come up with a bit of your own take on it over the years?
So I have to change my views here, of course, because it's set to come up in the weekly review. But let's start it today, since this is all right. So first of all, I think your weekly, yes, I've done over 1,000. I think your weekly review should be custom to you, right? It should follow what your inboxes, your places, your projects. So my weekly review is not actually just going to change it to sequential, right? I keep it as sequential, right? Again, another feature that doesn't seen anywhere else in any other software, which is that it literally is just showing me the next action, right? It's the beauty of it. That's the very next action, to start music. When I check that one, then I only see the very next action, and then I can do it. It's a great way to focus in on what you need to do next. I'm going to change it right now to parallel so you can see them all. Should have changed. Why didn't? Oh, that's weird. Why didn't you change these too? Well, maybe I'll have to do this the other way. Yeah, why are you showing me? Okay. But yeah, I have broke them out into the different areas, right? So I did get clear, get current, get creative, which is very traditional. But I also say you should also bring in stuff that's useful to you. Like, since I don't do any notifications, like I have to check my iPhone voicemail every week just to make sure, like, okay, like did something slip through? Although no one leaves voicemail anymore, only spam. But these are things that are just very, these are my inboxes, right? So I have mobile inboxes. I get my desk inbox. I get my OmniFocus inbox to 0. I get my mail, right? I have my flags. These are the ones that are just part of mine. I have a whole blog post about this, by the way, with the whole thing written up, so you can get to it if you want. But I have things that are just very custom to me. This is one of my favorites: is check photos for the last 10 days. I find that my phone is a capture tool, so I capture photos a lot. Sometimes I'll leave myself hints of where to do that. You can see, and then even let's see. So obviously Slack Slack is a big inbox, so I make sure to go into there. Clear notifications, and then you'll see, I think it actually says it somewhere here. It says, and get rid of useless ones. Yeah, and disable other ones. So if I find too many notifications, clear notifications, check SARS. This is all just making sure I'm checking the spots that there could be work waiting for me. And I think the key to the weekly review is to make sure that as your life changes, your weekly review should change. Right? My weekly review changed dramatically when I had a kid. Like there's a lot of things, a lot more places I need to look at. It changed dramatically when I started Arkus. I added this one, go through my messages, like on my phone, to make sure that I didn't leave some message unread or something. So it's just going through. I use Evernote, so I go through and check the list on Evernote. And then the calendar, right? So I leave myself little hints, go back. And even, this is funny, I leave myself key commands. So it's like, here's how to go back through those commands, right? 1, 2, 3. It's just anything to make it easier. I like to say that, like, if I had, if I lose all my memory, have that memento moment, like my OmniFocus would be right there behind me and pick me up and be like, yep, here's how you do it. Because it's all in there. Checking for anniversaries, check other places that I might have left stuff for myself, clear my computer desktop. My hint for a good week review too is to make sure you give yourself the right time of the week and the day, and also sometimes snack on it. I like to say there's a snacking week review. That's where you kind of do it a little. You don't have to have it done one time. Like I did this weekend. I did a little bit on Saturday, a little bit on Sunday. That's okay, right? I can figure that out. And so I have my weekly review actually start on Thursday afternoon because maybe on Friday I want to do a couple things. I want to start on some of it. Generally takes me about 2.5 hours is general, but I have a lot, you can see. And then I even leave key commands to use different perspectives. So I use a lot of perspectives, obviously review perspective, but I use a lot to look at different pieces. Review my home perspective. And there you go. Prune current active projects to 40 or so or lower. So it's really to remind me to make sure I don't have too much on my plate. I know where my stress levels are. And when I have over 40, 50 active projects, so when I know my stress levels go through the roof, when I'm under 20, I'm looking for things to do. Like, I don't know, I need to go find a hobby or do something. I rarely have that much, but check Slack, recent additions, upcoming projects. There you go. Look at upcoming days in forecast view. So it's an OmniFocus. You can see I'm a pretty traditional tagger, like very traditional. I've played around with double tagging. I played around with the today tag. I like today tag. It's another good way of doing what I do with dates and things like that. But I'm pretty traditional. I use it the way I think, which is nice, which is just to filter things out, right? I want to filter. If I want to pull up a view of all the things I can do in OmniFocus right now, I could do it. If I want to pull up a view of all the things I can do as errands, I could do it. It's a great way to filter down to the work that you can do and not be looking at things you can't do. And then like get creative, GTD trigger lists. I go over my areas of focus and responsibilities. I mark it done in this other system. That's an internal system. And then that's it. And I'm done with my weekly review. We just did it all together.
Usually takes a little longer than that, I imagine.
Yeah, I tell that to people when they're doing week review, like not every week review has to be the same. It's like, I guess the nice analogy is like, it's like a meal. Like, you can have a really fast meal, go to McDonald's and you're still fed yourself. And you can also go and have a 4-hour course, beautiful thing. Maybe that's going to be, but you don't, the key is just to do it. Like sometimes I do them on a plane. Sometimes I do them when I'm away. Sometimes I do them right here in my office. Some are better than others. They're not always the best week review. But the idea is to get through it and to make sure that I don't leave any open loops out there that will come back to bite me.
And I imagine you don't go through every one of these actions every week. That if you were on vacation or something like that.
On vacation, I can't do certain things, right? There's functional things, my inbox here. But I'm a pretty traditional GTD person. Like I got the physical inbox, I got the label maker. Some of the things have kind of shifted a little bit now. I'm much more digital. But I'm pretty traditional on the week review. And to me, I think you get to the point where you really are, you feel it is, I think it's the analogy is the teeth. Like you don't brush your teeth for a couple of days, you start to feel like scummy. Like that's the way, if I don't do my week review by Sunday, I'm starting to feel like, like I need to go do that thing. I need to get through it. And I enjoy it tremendously and I reward myself, power of habit. I reward myself with a nice cup of coffee or whatever to get through it. But it's become to the point that it's like going to the gym. If I don't go to the gym, I don't feel well. If I don't go to the week review, I don't feel well. So, and I think that's where it becomes really powerful.
I'm curious about this one too, since I am developing a course on note-taking. How do you use OmniFocus in conjunction with note-taking apps? And you mentioned Evernote is the one you're using, in particularly to be able to save more granular information or actions such as checklists and to save relevant project-related resources. So kind of what's the relationship between OmniFocus and your note-taking app?
Yeah, OmniFocus is for actionable things, not for long-term storage, right? Long-term storage, things that I want to be able to review or look back or hoard or have, those are long-term. Those go into lists and things like that. Evernote. I consider this very, I don't leave things in here that need to be gotten to, right? Yes, it's actionable, but they're not like, the top 10 places I went on vacation or right? It's not that type of stuff. I do like Evernote, although, Notes is caught up at this point. And yeah, so it's lists, it's someday maybe lists, it's bucket lists, it's, I do a lot of just capturing things that are sort of historical, right? Like places I lived or, trips or places I go in the country. Like I keep a list and those are all in Evernote. This is more the actionable side of things.
And the question, do you always follow the 5-step process in GTD, or have you kind of started to improvise a bit around that?
I think once you get GTD really, really well, you don't follow it like, capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. It just becomes like a habit. You just start just to do it. So you kind of do them naturally, especially capture, clarify, and organize sometimes all happen at the same time. If I throw something into my OmniFocus into a new project and put it on repeat, that's kind of already doing that, right? I've done 3 steps in one. So the more you get into GTD, the more it just becomes, you don't have to think through these steps. You just kind of do it naturally. Same thing with the chart of like, what is this? What does it mean to me? Can I defer it, delete it? Like it just becomes a motion that you just know and do naturally.
Question, since the weekly review is sequential, if you want to skip one of the actions or you want to selectively spend time on an action further down the sequential list, you drop the actions that are earlier in the sequence. I guess getting back to if you're in a different context, like you're on vacation or something like that.
Just do it. I mean, I don't hold it's all about what you hold yourself. If I say empty wallet, but my wallet's in the other room and I know it's empty, I'll just click I emptied it, right? I don't need, this is not reporting up to the government of what I did. This is something between me and OmniFocus. So if I clicked it is done, it's fine. So if I'm on vacation and I can't empty out my wallet, I'll just go empty. Yes, I did it all, Now, there are times where I run out of time and I have to like bounce out and like, I will then take things that like need to get done. Like sometimes I don't have enough time to like empty my inbox, or I didn't empty inbox, or I need to do scan or something else. Then I'll just move that to a new task and put it on a different day, right? So it's like okay, I can't get to this piece because maybe it's too big or maybe it's just overwhelming. So I'll just say, okay, and I'll just capture it for put it somewhere else, maybe put it in the miscellaneous.
Paul is wondering if you can share your forecast perspective configuration. So you're not showing deferred for date items or you're not using notifications. And do calendar items normally show up?
I usually throw all my calendars, but there's a lot of stuff in my calendars. So I pull them out for this purposes, for the recording purposes.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. And I imagine the preserve hierarchy has been a huge feature for you because otherwise it becomes unwieldy if you have a project that's due today with 10 actions. And that's where I think the forecast fell flat. So I'm really glad they put in the preserve hierarchy.
Yeah, no, it's much, much better now.
Since your project's review is set to available only, how do you add review the remaining items in your project? So I know you mentioned using the review perspective, but how do you interact with things that are coming next week or next year or something like that? Are you relying on review for that, or is there another mode you go into where you're looking at pending projects?
So the review should catch them, right? If they're pending, that means that they're a date that is defer in the future. So in theory, they're going to come to you no matter what, right? You've picked the time, it's deferred out, it's going to come. You don't really need to see them until they show up. But the review is a nice catch on that, right? Because a pending project can still come up in review. The question is, how many times does it need to come up? So for example, again, I think the example of the passport, right? Passports are once every 10 years. Well, I might want to see it, but I don't want to see it every 2 months. Like that's a lot, like something that's every 10 years. So, I think that's where I think changing the value is really important of the review frequency, because it should match what the type of project is. And also if projects are repeating all the time, then you really don't need to review them ever, right? Really, like if it's like a week review, how many times do I need to review the project in my week review? If I'm doing my week review every week, right? You don't need to. So the review should be bringing something to your attention that you might want to pull, like, oh, so I'll go and I'll use perspectives to look at all my things that are on hold sometimes if I'm looking for things to do, right? I'll be like, oh, I don't have enough to do. Let me go look. Oh, I could pick that one or that one or that one, and I'll make them active.
Or when you're doing a review, I think that'd be a natural time to take some things off hold too.
Yeah. I actually, and because the review, the weekly review, because the review perspective is kind of there, and I use it on my phone. It's actually really great on the phone. And I sometimes are just reviewing them like throughout when I have time. If I'm in the subway, I'll like go and I'll just go over the review and be like, okay, yeah, reviewed. Okay. And then sometimes my favorite is I find something that I already did. I'm like, oh, I've already done that. Oh, that's great. Mark complete,
And do you have sort of a cadence for looking at review, or do you just do it more ad hoc?
I do it, it's in my review as a catch-all, but I do it ad hoc.
Yeah.
I basically,
Okay.
when I'm on my phone and in OmniFocus, because the perspective has a little number in it, and I have it on the fold on the bottom of my phone, I kind of sometimes I go, ooh, stuff in there, and I click in it, and I go, oh, this is fun. So I will say, when you have a lot of projects, it can be a lot of things to review. So that's why that cadence is super important.
Yeah, and you don't want it to accumulate too many projects for review. Is the GTD forum, I think it's GTD Connect, maybe you're referring to, a good resource, or where's a good place to go for sort of general GTDs?
I used to be into forums, like I used to run forums. I don't do that anymore. So I really, for me to get information, I'm much more of a podcast person. So I follow all the Next Action Associate, the GTD Nordic, the GTD. That's where I get most of my like talking, and because I'm not really necessarily looking for advice. I sometimes like to hear how they're framing things. And then selfishly, or not selfishly, but also inside of my company, we have like a channel, like its own dedicated GTD channel. So we do a lot of talking in there and questions and answering and what do you think and what do you want? So I kind of have my own forum, if you will.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
GTD Connect is really nice. There's lots of good people. I'm in there occasionally, but I mainly stick to those channels for either gathering information or exchanging internally.
Yeah, I listen to the excuse me, GTD podcast quite a bit, and there's a lot of real gems in there. Sometimes there's a lecture that David Allen gave like 15 years ago, but it's
Yes.
just as
Yes.
relevant today as it was when he gave it. And comment from Jessica mentioning a Pletro app called Pletro. I really like that as well. It's you do Shift Command P and it exposes anything within the menu structure of an app. So especially if you're not using, if you've hidden the toolbar icons and so forth, it can be a really great way of getting to perspectives and commands within OmniFocus, Omni automations if you use them. So that's one I definitely recommend as well. Do you put a tag on everything essentially, or do some
Yeah.
things remain untagged?
I don't tag projects necessarily, but in my inbox, I don't let it come out of my inbox unless it's tagged as a tagged. So generally, yes, it's more for filtering. And there's a hidden thing for tagging. People are like, why do you tag? And what's the context? And does anything really need a context anymore? Because we don't live in a world where internet is only one place. Like, basically your phone can do everything that a computer could do, and it's connected. And so like, some of this goes away. I like to think of tags when they used to be context, as kind of thinking through the task a little bit, right? So it's yes, I can pull up a list of all the calls I need to do or all the emails I need to do, but it's sort of when I'm capturing it and when I'm clarifying it. In the clarifying step, it's kind of making you think, well, where are you doing this? So it's like, oh, I'm going to email that person or I'm going to call them, and it makes me just think through the task a little bit more, and I think it gives better clarity to the thing, which makes it easier to do later.
I call it productive friction, where you're actually purposely introducing friction in order to have a more useful system, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, but it's there's also like the today guy and the tomorrow, or the today person, tomorrow person. Like the today person's always like, oh, I don't want to do it, and then leaves tomorrow person with the perfect thing to do. So sometimes the today person, the person who's capturing or clarifying or organizing it, is helping the person in the future by giving more detail, right? Because that person then can pick it up and go, oh, I know exactly what Jason meant yesterday when he captured this.
Before we go, I just want to briefly touch on how OmniFocus interacts with your collaborative systems at Arkus, including Salesforce. Where do you draw the line between what goes into a collaborative system versus what goes into OmniFocus or Evernote or something?
Yeah, it's a number one question I get at Arkus. What do I put in? And we have tons of systems, lots. In fact, I think most organizations kind of have too many systems at this point. I like to say, look, OmniFocus is like your brain. It's private. It's for you. It's the way you need to use it and organize it. And sometimes somebody else might look at it and it might not mean anything to do. But as long as it means something to you and it's organized the way you need, and it has the information you need. But like your brain, you're going to have things in different places. Like you're going to remember things that you don't need to remember. Like you can't really control it. So if it's something that somebody else needs, like a client needs or another employee needs or we need, then it needs to go in that other system. That doesn't mean you might not have a pointer to it here, right? There might be a pointer to do that. You're seeing all pointers in here. The outcome is going to be in a system that could be collaborative. An outcome could be in a system that's captured or documented. The pointer is in here. The way to make sure that it gets done is in here. So there is some overlap. I will say I'm less, because it's a private system to me and it's my brain. Sometimes I know the way my brain works, so I'm less detailed, right? I'm less detailed of what I need to do, because my brain can go email insurance guy. Oh, I know exactly what that was, right? So, but if I were going to tell you to email insurance guy or a client or whatever, what do you mean? And it'd be much more detailed. So sometimes I just tell people, look, put the detail you need in the system that's for you. This is that system. In other systems, you're going to capture different types of things at different levels of detail and for different purposes. If it's for somebody else, then it has to go in that other system.
Thanks for that, Jason. I think that's a great note to end on. And I really appreciate you being here today and sharing all your wisdom spanning many years. And thanks to everybody who joined this live session and all the great comments and questions you contributed. That definitely makes for a richer recording too, that I'm sure many people will benefit from. So take care, everybody. I hope to see you again soon.